Hello and welcome to another episode of International Immersion. I am here with Sean and Herman back again for another podcast around traveling. So, Sean, what's our topic today?
Well, Herman, today our topic is a pretty broad one: transportation.
Yeah, so as we travel around the world, transportation is not the same. So, in the United States, uh, basically the mode of transportation, at least 80% of the time from my point of view is always vehicles like cars. um, Everybody has to get a car in order to get anywhere, and especially in the Midwest.
For
um,
sure.
and Traveling around in public transportation is always so limiting, uh, whether you just don't get far enough or it's like a very preset here. And
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with the Midwest region where we're from is the fact that it's very quiet, it's very tranquil, it's very relaxed, and I'd say quite safe. But almost everyone has a car, and if you don't have a car, you're almost grounded. Unless you're living in maybe Chicago, St. Louis, Memphis, one of the bigger cities, then you have more options. But if you live outside the big city, pretty much 100% of the time you need a car. And if there is like county transit, like for example, the county we live in has a decent county transit system, but it's still very limited because it only goes between certain cities. So it's still quite for but more or less it limits you in what you can and can't do. Now, juxtaposed to this to overseas, and particularly our focus today in China, and I'm going to use the city Hangzhou, where I lived at for 4 years, as kind of the primary example. Public transportation is just so much more. It's just there's so much more available, and it's much more intricate, and it really is quite amazing coming from a place where you don't really have much of it to where it's everywhere.
yeah, and to be fair, like it's there. It's not that it doesn't necessarily exist where in the U.S. It's more like it's like very special cities. I mean, I've traveled to New York, and they have very much a subway system in which you can get to pretty much all of Manhattan and I think some of the islands fairly easily and fairly affordable. Um, and the biggest thing that kind of like shocked and awed me when I went to um, my first international was actually the train, the subway system in Japan. Um, I could literally go all around Tokyo for no more than maybe a good distance, about a thousand yen. That's roughly around 10 USD.
Quite
And
impressive. I mean, yeah, and adding to that, if you go to some of the larger Chinese cities like Beijing or Shanghai, the subway system is just huge. They're very intricate. The lines intermingle, and you can go anywhere. And I would say, even compared to Japan, the subway network in China is a lot cheaper. I mean, it's you can take some of the less for some routes for less than $1. And in Hangzhou, for example, if you go the farthest, it will maybe around $1, maybe $1.50 max. So it's so much cheaper even than the mass transit here, and you can go a decent amount of area. But I would say Hangzhou, in particular, they've not yet built up the subway system to the same size as other cities, primarily because of the soil conditions there. It's built more in a swamp. There's not a lot of bedrock, so it's much more difficult to build there. But from the time I've been there, when I first arrived, there were only 2 lines, and then now that I've gone, they've increased to 4, and they're working on many more. So you can kind of see the progression. But when I've been to Shanghai or Nanjing, I mean, it's so convenient to go around and so cheap.
yeah, when it's just amazing how this network kind of grows. Like, uh, I literally once got lost in the Japanese subway metro section, and I literally was very thankful that I downloaded an app that kind of just like it was an offline app that took you from point A to point B very easily. Like we got lost one time so badly that this was the only way that I kind of even knew how to like
Navigate your way
navigate through it. The the Tokyo train station, the Kyoto train stations were enormous, and and it's funny how they're super clean. Like these are very like when I think of subways, I usually think, oh, it's underground. People aren't really taking care of it. I'm gonna.
Yeah, a lot of things can come to mind when you think of a subway station or a subway. Like if you think about the subways in the U.S., they're completely functional, but because they're not young or they're not new, they have more of an older style, and naturally things do wear down over time, and and they need upkeep. But I think the big difference is that the ones in China and Japan and other countries, they're fresh. Like the subways in Hangzhou are 10 years or younger, so they're much more like modern. They're more futuristic looking. It's not like that more cold hard concrete steel facade that you see like in a subway station in Chicago where I've been, because I've been on the Chicago subway. I like it, but the ones in China that I've been on are just they look cleaner. Maybe they not be cleaner, but they're just newer, so they're just more fresh in the kind of the impression they give you.
Mm. Yeah, and the fact that they're so well maintained just astounds me, and it kind of makes me favor it a little bit more, uh, except when maybe in the high volume time zones, like rush hours.
Yeah,
Uh,
population mass is much more concentrated or just larger in the case of China. But yeah,
no,
yeah,
same in Japan, man. It was awful. We got into a train. I think it was, yeah, maybe 10 or 11. Like it was still fairly in the morning, but it was when everybody was going into work, and we actually thought we felt like sardines in a can type of thing. It was like somebody actually. I thought they were gonna bring out the people to with the sticks to come and push us into the train because it was so overfilled. Like we were like,
so pretty much kiss your personal space goodbye.
oh, extremely. Forget about it.
Yeah, I would say that when I first started taking the subway in Hangzhou during rush hour, it was a bit horrifying because you're literally you're shoulder to shoulder being pressed on all four sides by people, shoulder to shoulder, side to side in the train. But as you live there more and you do get used to it. Now I do think that can be a big problem for a lot of people. Some people can deal with it. Other people just can't. I mean, I have some family members, they could never deal with that regardless of how long they live there. But you kind of have to go into that state of mind where, okay, I'm in this place. This is how things function. I can't change it. I have to adapt. I can't expect the environment to adapt for me. I have to adapt. So by having that mentality, even though sometimes it's very uncomfortable and unpleasant, you can cope with it.
yeah,
But I saw other foreigners there, or non-Chinese, they just couldn't deal with it. I mean,
yeah. It does take some getting used to, but like if I were to live in that type of city, I would prefer this to any other type of transportation, to be honest. Because one, it's very very nice to get almost anywhere, and two, it's cheap.
yeah, hands down, hands
It's
down.
cheap, man. It's
Well, and also, I love my truck. I have a truck. I drive it. There's nothing like having that personal freedom of driving your own vehicle. But I will say, if you're going to work or class every morning, going to and from, especially if you don't live on campus or you live far from work, not having to drive, being able to just sit down, relax, or just stand and relax and not have to worry about the traffic, that is a very nice feeling. So it's
yeah,
kind of, it's like pick your, which do you prefer? Do you prefer having your own vehicle that you have to drive, go through traffic, rush hour, etc., or do you avoid that and just deal with the crowd around you for however long your commute is? So
yeah,
I think depending on who you ask, it can really vary. But
yeah,
having done both, they're both fine. But I would say that it's kind of nice not having the cost of maintaining a vehicle. Your
yeah.
gas, your insurance, wear and tear, upkeep, repairs, and so you can dispel all those expenses. But at the same time, it's still not as, I would say, it still does not give you the same amount of freedom as a personal vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah, but if it is like a city like Hangzhou and it's a city like a country like Japan, I think you can kind of get away with it because I do agree, man. The maintenance of a car, like I just spend a ridiculous amount of money just for brake pads in my car.
Oh,
And
fun, right?
yeah, so it's kind of like if I can get that, I mean, if I can already pay that through my taxes to the government in order for them to maintain the public transportation that is effective and never fails, you know, why not?
A great example of tax money that you're willing to pay because it makes my life much more convenient, and it's easier to get to where I need to go. And I think that's the difference between Hangzhou is a city of 8 million plus, count metro areas, or 12, whereas our area, St. Louis is only about 3 million max if you count the metro area.
Mm.
So naturally, there's just because it's much larger and there's so much more, it's easier to get around.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, you have to deal with more congestion, more crowds. So, classic pros and cons of city living or small town living or any place in between.
Exactly. And and this is just for the metro areas, right? Like the ridiculous thing is that they both have a metro network, but also like a country network in which I could get from Tokyo to all the way down to the bottom of the map. I think I know that Tokyo to Osaka, it's about a 3 hour train ride.
Fast train or subway?
So this is the Shinkansens, which are the bullet trains.
Oh, nice. Okay, China has them too, and they're pretty awesome.
Yeah, I actually, I think China has the fastest bullet trains, Shinkansens, because you guys have the China has adopted to the mag rails, using magnets instead of like the actual friction, so that it reduces the friction, allows you to go faster.
Yeah, and I will say that I've taken the fast train on numerous occasions while I was in China, and they're amazing. I mean, it's amazing because I took one trip, from Shanghai. I took it from Shanghai to Hangzhou many times, but it normally takes 2-3 hours by car. It's 45 minutes on the train,
Yeah.
and you're going 200 plus kilometers per hour, and things are just zipping by, but you feel nothing in there. It's amazing, and they're very futuristic. They keep them very clean. Every place you go, the subway or on the bullet train in the stations, they have cleaners everywhere, constantly making sure it's tidy and the upkeep is there.
Yeah, that is true. Like I never thought like moving so fast would be so not bumpy.
Tranquil, yeah. I mean, there were some points where there's some bumps, but on one of my longer trips, we got almost 300 kilometers per hour, and you're looking at the gauge going, whoa, and things are zipping by. Like you'll see a village or something go by in the countryside, and literally within a couple seconds, it's out of sight, and you're like, yeah, that's fast, but you feel nothing being in the actual compartment.
Yeah,
and that's kind of a trip.
Yeah, that's so weird because, like not even the of like a train. Yeah, like I know that there's a train that we have here that takes us from the St. Louis to Chicago.
Oh, Amtrak.
Yeah, and it's not as fast.
I think max is at around 90.
Yeah, around there.
And that's a stretch to say that.
Yeah, and it's like not a very smooth ride. I mean, you can feel that you're.
I've taken the Amtrak from Chicago to St. Louis. It's about 5 hours. I mean, it's a quiet and relaxed ride, but it's not nearly as smooth.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, one of the probably most, it was actually quite frightening, but at the same time absolutely amazing, was when I was in Hainan on vacation with my girlfriend. We were at a station, and a bullet train went through the station at full speed.
Oh, nuts.
It was in and out of the station in less than 2 seconds.
Oh.
I mean, and it was literally, it was just like, and gone. You're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to be in it, but you can see it, like you hear like it coming and then and gone, and you're just like, whoa. You can't even really make out when it's coming. You can see it, but once it's going through, you can't make out any specific detail. It's just a blur.
Yeah. No.
And you can feel the concussion with the wind and the displacement of the air as it comes through. That was quite amazing. I mean, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, no, they're by far the trippiest ride I've ever had. And, I mean...
I just hope we get them here at some point. That'd be great.
That'd be nice. And, I mean, they're fairly affordable even still, right?
Oh, completely. I took the trains from Shanghai to Hangzhou, maybe 70 to 100 renminbi, or Chinese yuan, 10 to 15 USD for one way. I mean, that's going 3 hours by car. I mean, good luck finding something like that in the States. Amtrak from here from St. Louis to Chicago is going to be at minimum $25-$30, give or
Yeah.
take, depending on the class. But and then if you want to go from like Hangzhou to Beijing, which is like a 2 hour, 2.5 hour flight, to 6 hour train ride around, and it's like 400 to 600 yuan, which is maybe 70 to 90 bucks. I mean, it's like wow, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, see, I think maybe that's where uh, it's a little bit of a disadvantage. In Japan, I think the cost of the Shinkansens were a little bit more pricey.
But
To
you
be
also have
honest.
to factor in the currency difference.
Yeah,
I think $1 is now like almost 7.1 Chinese yuan.
Mm.
And then I think Japanese like $1 is like 100 yen around.
yeah, I think it's about $1 is around 100 yen. Yeah, about. Yeah, but still,
But still very cheap, generally
yeah,
speaking.
yeah. Compared to like flying, like like it's like so cheap, and you don't have to worry about the hassle of going through the terminal like at all. Like I
You can kiss all the security goodbye.
yeah,
I mean, there is security when you go
of
through on the
course.
bullet trains, but it's nothing like the airport. They don't strip search you, so it's
Yeah.
much more laid back.
Plus, like they have like little, I guess, malls in there like you can go do your shopping and then like get a meal and then get in return and then there you go.
Like the ones in China, they'll have maybe a dining car, and they always have a trolley that goes down with snacks and stuff you can buy, and so it's quite. And now I would say that the stuff on the train is generally more expensive than what you'll find outside of the train, but that's by Chinese standards. If you live there, you kind of figure out where's cheaper, where's not naturally. But compared to the U.S., I mean, you can't. There's no comparison. Cost comparison.
Yeah. So like I would say if you decide to travel to these countries, uh,
Definitely try it at least once. I
try.
mean, take full advantage of the public transportation system in the city or cities you visit. You will not regret it. It may take you getting used to, depending on the population mass and also just how used it is. But you're gonna save a lot of money. Two, you're gonna see more things, and three, you're gonna meet people. I
Yeah.
meet people in the subway all the time. I chat and
Oh
talk to
really?
people in China. Now, I wouldn't say it's like every day, but I have met people in the subway that I've talked to and carry on a conversation. Now, but I would say that people in China are not as talkative in public as I'd say Americans are, but you never know. It just depends on where you're going and who
Man,
happens to be around you at any given time.
it's completely different in Japan, man. You're supposed to be like silent. You're not supposed to be talking on your phone. You're not supposed to like in here like think about how you take public transportation. Everybody's very loud and open and like very energetic. No, man, in Japan, you have to be very respectful, and you kind of appreciate that because like yeah, maybe not being loud and annoying, like having your phone out and speaking in speaker phones, like, hey, what you up to? You know?
Unfortunately, I can't say it's that good in China.
Oh, really?
I mean, people are generally more or less quiet, but it's never like there's always people talking. There's always people on their phone. There's always people talking loudly on their phone. It just depends on who's around you at any given time. So it's definitely not as peaceful, but people are not. It depends. Like if they're strangers, it's quiet. If there are groups of people that know each other, then it's chit chat, and people talk quite loud. So it really depends, but you can get an assortment of different situations on the metro in Shanghai, Hangzhou, Beijing, wherever you go. But don't expect it'll be quiet.
Yeah, no, it was the complete opposite. Bro. It was super quiet. You could just see everybody with their headsets on, maybe listening to music, not no phone calls actually, and then reading mangas, and it was like, whoa, like you don't
Little
see
strange.
this, and 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 uh, and another thing that's super big over there is the fact of the all female trains carts. So like due to I guess like overly groping women, they get the government has decided to like create like these women only carts.
I've heard about that. Yeah, I think there's a or Japanese term I think called chikan.
Mm.
They call that. It's been a huge problem, and they're trying to take more measures to control that. I can't really say that there's anything public about that in China that I've seen. I mean, I haven't seen any women only metro cars, but I do know it has been an issue there, and they are doing measures, but it's more private.
Yeah, but
At least from what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I always see articles here and there of like, oh, they developed a new like little gadget. Like one time I saw a little gadget in which it's like a little stamp that it's invisible ink, and you stamp the perpetrator, and then you call them out on it, and then you shine the little UV light,
Oh,
and it's
okay.
like, yeah, see, this guy was doing something inappropriate. So,
whatever works, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're actively trying to solve the issue, and I think that's a very positive thing. But yeah, I say if you are traveling, if you're living there, that's the way to go. Um, I've I've had the pleasure of using taxis. So for most major areas in Japan, like Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, the train system is actually very good, very good. However, in Hiroshima, it was quite atrocious, or at least I couldn't see it as much.
Not as comparable.
Yeah.
Or,
So it kind of forced my hand into using taxis for the first time, and in my trip, and by far, like taxis are so like again, I've only Ubered in the U.S. But
unfortunately, I've had to take taxis in the U.S. And I remember one way from Chicago here to downtown like $50, and you're just like,
yeah, no, taxis. I don't think taxis anywhere you go is going to be a cheap expense.
And compared to public transportation, of course not.
Oh my god!
But there are definitely some differences between the prices country to country.
Oh, for sure.
And I would say that compared to public transportation in China, the taxis, they're definitely a lot more expensive. They're still very cheap by U.S. standards, but there's definitely a huge difference. Like in Hangzhou, the taxi fare rate starts at 11 RMB, and probably the most expensive subway route is 6 or 7 yuan in Hangzhou. So automatically, from the offset, you're paying more than a full, trip across the subway system in the city.
So, but I mean, you kind of do sacrifice like a direct route versus a non-direct route, and I guess that does include like you have to pay more.
Convenience. You're paying for convenience.
Yeah. But I tell you, man, the fact that taxi was clean, didn't smell like smoke, didn't smell like puke or anything. The taxi driver was even like very like had like little covers all over the seats, and they all wore like gloves. So you're not actually like touching anybody, like germs passing, I guess, is the idea behind it.
So it's very well maintained, and
so it's a very well maintained. Like if you feel like you're actually getting into like a very luxurious taxi, when you're just getting into a normal taxi.
I would say, in Hangzhou, and particularly where I've taken those taxis, it's not that, like prestigious or like, ooh, wow. But it's, it's pretty basic. I mean, cars are well maintained. I mean, they're clean. I can't say they're immaculate, but, they have, you have the spot, they keep it clean. Driver, they could be, you can find all types of variety. Mm-hmm. For drivers, and I found in Hangzhou a lot of the drivers were not from there, so they didn't usually speak the local dialect, so communicating with them could be difficult because sometimes they didn't speak standard Mandarin, and if you do know local Mandarin like I do, if they're like someone who speaks Mandarin, okay, I can talk to them a little bit, but that was kind of difficult saying, okay, I want to go here, and like no, I want to go here, but it was much cheaper, and I would say depending on the time of day, if you're gonna take one during rush hour, it's not worth it. If you're taking one on the weekend, you're going to go clubbing or something, oh, for sure. Especially if you're coming back late from something. It's just so much more convenient because after 11 o'clock, the subways and homes are shut down. Buses, there are night buses, but there's far fewer of them.
Yeah. That actually is kind of weird for me. I guess in such a like because it's such a convenience. The fact that a lot of these systems accept taxis and maybe buses, a lot of them shut down like at midnight.
And even buses in Hangzhou, in many cities, the number go, drops substantially. There are
Yeah,
night buses, but they're much fewer.
and I get it, right? Like
Options.
less demand during those time. People are, but I mean at the same time, like people party, go drink, like
Oh yeah, whenever I
like
go party with friends, we'd always take taxis back and split the fare.
yeah,
Especially if we've all been out drinking or really tired. It's 12, 1, 2 in the
yeah,
morning. We don't want to have to, find a place to get on the public, whatever's left at that, hour of the night. It's just so simple, to call a cab or just flag one down and go back. Instead of being like 20 minutes on the bus, take 10 minutes on the taxi.
yeah. I mean, yeah, the taxi fares for us like weren't that bad, but I thought that we did like $20 to get from a hotel that was kind of far out into the city of Hiroshima, and it was $20. It's not that bad. It was like 2,000 yen, but I mean, still, it's like $20
Yeah.
divided four way. It's kind of like
That's pretty funny because like the one of the longest taxi rides I took in Hangzhou was probably $15, and that was going from one side to the other,
oh
like
wow,
120 RMB.
yeah, that's
So
pretty
it was
cheap.
very cheap. And normally, like I said, the base fare starts at 11 RMB. That's like $1.60, $1.70. So you can easily get from most places under $5,
Mm.
depending on where you're going. Now, if you're going like more than a quarter or halfway across the city, then you're gonna get into more maybe 5, 10. But very rarely do you even get $10. You have to go a pretty decent way to get to that.
Do you guys have Uber?
They have what's called DD, which is like the
DD.
Chinese version of Uber. And I have the DD app on my phone. I used it. It was quite a nice thing. It's cheaper than the taxis, and it's caused a lot of conflict between the taxis and taxi
Yeah.
drivers and the Uber drivers. There's actually even a brawl one point in Hangzhou where the taxi drivers got pissed and they called the DD drivers and they got into a big street fight. I mean, I wasn't there, but it was involved at least 20, 30 people. This was back in 2014, 2015-ish, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it's like they're disrupting the market. Uber, Didi, Lyft. These are companies that are disrupting the market. Which, I mean, yeah, like it's been the same forever, and there's nobody out there trying to like break them apart. So like the
Exactly.
fact that Lyft and Uber um, have become a thing. It causes one for prices to go down on fares and
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's a more of a convenience, but it does kind of impact somebody's pocket
Yeah.
somewhere.
Now, I will say the one thing I did notice in China was that if you're a foreigner and the driver knows you don't speak Chinese or they think you're a foreigner, they may say 50. Like they may give you a set amount and not put you on the meter. Never do this. Make sure they put you on the meter. And if you're coming in from the airport, they'll also the taxis not so much. But there's a lot of local drivers. They'll try to charge you, 2, 3, 4, 500 RMB. Don't ever take that. That's a complete rip off.
Mm.
Like one personal example is if you're going from Hangzhou Shaoshan Airport to the city center, it's no more than 100, 120 RMB from there to the city center because the airport's pretty far off to the southwest or southeast of the city. So, but never pay more than that.
Mm.
So barter. You can barter those people, and if there are no taxis, find one. But in that case, take a taxi over that.
Mm. Yeah.
I've experienced that, and I've had to barter my way out of it. But I will say that if you do know some Chinese and you can actually barter in Chinese, that's when they'll kind of be, oh, okay, he knows, and they'll start to maybe back off or work with you more because they know they can't really sucker you
Yeah.
as easily.
Hmm. Uh, yeah. So I mean, uh, taxis are okay, but I would still stick to like other publics. Uh, I've only done a bus once in Japan. I mean, everything else was so convenient that like the buses were the last thing to kind of go. And I did once from a station to a factory. Like we were going to a beer factory, And the
That
only
sounds
way
like
to
fun.
yeah, no, it was a good time, and but like the only way to get there was through like a shuttle that they provided, so we had to wait for the bus. Um, and I mean, it was like very calm, very chill, like very spacious. Actually, I was really surprised, and but I don't know. How are your experiences with buses?
Well, my friend, buses were the primary form of transportation that I used in China the entire time I was there. And I would say that above any other form of public transportation, buses are by far the most frequently used by myself while I was there. One, because you have to understand that the 4 years I was there, during that time, the subway system in Hangzhou expanded twofold.
Mm.
So initially, the subway was not around where I was studying. So and next to our campus was a pretty decent sized bus station that had a lot of routes going through it. So it's so convenient. So buses were my primary form of transportation the first half of my time there, and then the second half when they were developing the subway network more, that's when I started to split more between buses and subway. Slowly, subways taking more of a precedent over buses, but I never could get away from buses. And the buses were really cheap. If depending on the route, you can it's 1 to like 5 RMB, or like literally like 15 cents, 30 cents, 45 cents, up to $1. So cheap, so cheap. Now, I will tell you, these buses they're not, I wouldn't say they're not comfortable, but they stop and you recoil back and forth from the bus, you're standing, you got to hold on.
Oh.
So if you're not used to it the first time, it's going to be a wild ride because they don't stop like gingerly like they do here. I mean, they stop and, it's
Like,
quite
beep.
bumpy. So, I would say depending on your balance and equilibrium, be cautious, but you get used to it after a while. And just like the subway during peak hours, you can be literally getting on and off can be a real pain. You have to literally meander your way through people like pushing through to get out. But if it's not during rush hour, it's not too bad.
Huh.
But there's so many networks in Hangzhou, and it's just so convenient. But at the same time, it's the cheapest form of transportation. It's the most available, but you have to deal more with crowds and more with traffic.
Mm. So what was your average like? I guess like what was your average time in a bus like, just to get from point A to point
Like
A?
for example, like my when I was living on campus, most of my courses were on the same campus, so I didn't have to use it. But I did have a Chinese course and I had a China culture course at one of the other campuses. So I would take either one of the school buses, which was like a full shuttle bus, much more convenient, much more comfortable. But they weren't always available during the hours I would go there. So I usually take one bus 89, from my campus down to the other campus. It take about 20 minutes one way, and depending on like usually when I went down, one class was in the evening, so going down is around 5 or 6. It's kind of the end of rush hour. It take half an hour to 45 minutes, depending on the traffic. But coming back, probably 20 minutes or less because it was around 8:30, 9 o'clock by the time we get back. But I do remember getting out of class at around 8:30, and the last bus was at 9, so we had to rush down to the bus stop on the other side, on another corner of campus, the other campus, to get up, make sure we didn't miss the bus before that bus stopped. And that's another thing that's really important is you have to learn the routes. So me and my friends, we would just randomly go on buses for a day and just find places and experiment. And that's how we learned a lot of the routes. And you learn how much they are, what time they start and stop, the station names, all these things.
Man, it seems like you guys needed an app. That was an app opportunity right there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and like you said, I did download the Shanghai Metro app. It's a godsend, especially if you're off Wi-Fi or something, or you don't have service. It can save your butt. But yeah. I would say that most my fellow Americans here, I think they'd have a hard time with the bus system there because it's convenient, but they wouldn't be used to the number of people, how they're operated, kind of the rough rides compared to the buses here. But it was never a dull ride.
Yeah.
And kind of going on that, one thing that I got not too long after I was there was I got a bus card. It was a bus and subway card. You could use it for both. And you would charge every month. You could put 50, 100 Chinese yuan on it, and you would just scan it, and you get a little discount from either the bus or the subway, and it saved you a little money. Not a lot, but it still adds up over time, and that really is nice because you don't have to, make sure you have enough coins, or you make sure you have the right bills to feed the machine, get your ticket, and it's much more expedient to use that. So anyone who's going to be there for more than a few days, maybe a week or two or longer, get a bus card or a subway card. It's really going to help you out.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna be doing on my next trip to Japan. It's like uh, we had these like 1 day passes that were like godsends because like you can go from A to B, bus, train, doesn't matter.
That's
And
nice.
yeah, and it was $10 like for 1 day. Like you get go everywhere. I mean, for we were sightseeing like true like sightseers. So, like we were moving from point A to point E every like 30 minutes or so. So it's kind of helped us.
Yeah, if you're going to be like doing a lot of traveling around a city for a day, if like if you're even having a tour or something, then those are worth it.
Yeah, so like I recommend getting those passes. Like those are probably the best way. One of the best ways to
And
get it.
and if you don't know how much public transportation you're gonna utilize while you're there, if they have the option of a card, or what Herman are saying about get a card, put X amount of money on it that you think will last you, and then you can always add more later, because you can always add more at the subway stops or the bus stations. You could add more if they had a kiosk, or every subway station you could add more money on your card.
And
It's
then
never a big deal.
and at the end of your trip, you get a nice souvenir.
Exactly. And my Hangzhou card, if I go back, I can use it. So it's convenient. I'm like, well, why would I get a new one? I'll just keep. Yeah, and if you have any subway cards or anything that they don't expire, keep them. When you go back, if you ever go back, you can use them. And especially if you have money left on them, you already have something to play with. But one thing I wanted to share with everybody is, the fast trains in China and Japan are very nice, luxurious. But I did have an experience where I went on a trip to West China and I took one of the overnight slow trains. And I must say, this was a shocking experience in a multitude of ways. This is because this was an overnight train, a slow train. Um, it was 8 hours, and it was a sleeper car. The whole train was sleeper cars, and it was just packed with people. It was an experience.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of weird when you see these trains and these transportation when people are kind of sleeping in there.
Well, and the thing was this car, like, you had all these they had these there was no like enclosed compartments. They were just all open,
Mm-hmm.
and every like stall had like three bunks on each side for like six people per actual row, and they had a bench on the other side of the car where people would sleep and everything. And I would say there were maybe 60 plus bunks in this one car, but there were probably 100 people in the car. So that was a really interesting, because I was the only foreigner on this train, and we're not in East China. We're out in the west. We're out in Xi'an, going to Xining, which is in Qinghai province, which is more central West China. It was so weird because I'm the only foreigner on this train. I'm getting stared at the entire time, and it was just weird because literally I felt like a sardine in this train. There were so many people on it. There was no privacy. There was no like shower or anything. All they had was a bathroom and a sink for a car, and shared with 100 people. You can do the math there. Mm-hmm. But that was interesting. Didn't really sleep at all that night, but that was interesting. And I don't recommend it personally. I mean, it is something very cool that, hey, I can say I did it, but it was very cheap. It was like, it was so cheap. It was like maybe $5 or $10 to go like for 8 hours. So I mean, it's really cheap, and it really depends on where and how far you're going. But it was very cheap. But it depends on, I think, on your capacity to absorb the situation and what's there and what you can and can't do.
Exactly. Yeah. Something that I actually, I think this summer I've started doing it a lot more, and I kind of want to do it in Japan and China maybe one day. Is cycle around. I want to buy. I want to rent a bicycle and travel. Like I've started to like bicycle around my hometown, and every single time I travel to these like cities, like they're so beautiful that you just want to spend a day just biking around. There's actually like little a little connection of islands in South Japan and so, close to South Japan that have suspension bridges that you can just like bike. There's a bike trail, bike routes that you can just go. It's
Like island hopping across
yeah,
the bridges.
yeah.
Wow.
It's like I think it's like a little bit more than 15 miles to go through, but it's something that I would like. So like in Japan,
Sounds awesome, except unless you don't like bridges.
that's very true. If you have a fear of bridges, man, yeah, that's not the place for you to be. But
Yeah, when I was in China, I had a bike. It was, I mean, I used it all the time, especially on campus because our campus was huge. Now, going across the city, not so much, but there were some days, me and buddies, we would just go ride all day through the city. I mean, we'd come back tired because a lot of pedaling, a lot of stop and go, stop and go. And I remember one day biking to class out of the other campus during rush hour. That was scary. Literally, you're in this sea of bikes, literally inches apart from the other bikes, stop and go at the intersections. That was a trip. I mean, I biked before, but I'd say my experience biking increased exponentially over there because you have to be very aggressive and very defensive when you're biking.
yeah, it's funny like the way that in Asia how people bike is such a different because it's a mode of transportation.
Yeah.
I got a legit mode of transportation over here. It's kind of a hobby type of thing. Like you can get around for sure. Like, but it's
But
kind of like
it boils down to where you live.
yeah, exactly. Uh, and I used to see like these moms carrying their kids in a little back seat.
Yep,
Yeah.
same in China. And a lot of the bikes have these little seats built in the back, so you'll see this very commonly. The boyfriend and the girlfriend sitting on the back of the bike, and he'll be driving her around, or just people in general. So, and also, while I was there, and as I was there more, they started doing these rental bikes everywhere. You'd see all these about hundreds of bikes spread out across the city. You can take your bus card, you scan it, unlocks, you ride the bike, and it charges you per hour. And then when you lock it up, it charges the amount off your card or off your mobile pay app.
Yep.
So, and it was cool, but toward the end of my time there were so many companies that were posted it. There were areas where it was just nothing but bikes. You couldn't even walk on the sidewalk because there were just so many bikes. So it was nice, but it kind of got oversaturated. So they actually had these buses that come around and they would recycle the bikes around the city, upkeep and everything. It was cool, but it was in places it would get a little oversaturated, especially with everyone would leave one area and go to one area. Yeah. So they'd have to shuffle the bikes back to kind of maintain the balance and the availability.
And I'm starting to see that more, especially in St. Louis. They have the Lime bikes and the Lime scooters.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's kind of a nice convenience because like you scooter, maybe you park fairly far away and then you scooter or you bike the rest of your commute. It's kind of a nice little offset. Or if you're like my friends, they just like scooter around during their lunch breaks. It's just like, yep, let's just scooter around.
No, it was really convenient, especially if you're not too far from home. Like let's say you want to go to the mall, maybe a mile away. You just find one of these bikes, ride there, lock it up, do your thing, and then let's say you get groceries or something, you just get a bus and go back. Or if you just go there for fun, have dinner, and don't have anything, just unlock a bike and take it back home. Mm-hmm. So it's very nice and convenient. Now, but granted, it depends on the weather. Like if you're in the Hangzhou in the midst of summer when it's 80, 90, up to 100 degrees with almost complete, fully 100, maybe up to 100% humidity, you're not going to want to do this or walk. You want to take the subway, not even the buses. The buses are air conditioned, but you want to be in the subway. Yeah. Or the winter, depends on your cold tolerance, but as with anything, weather permitting.
Yeah. Well, winter. Winter.
Not looking forward to winter again as it's coming on slowly but surely.
Yeah, it's getting closer. I'm hoping that on my travels right now, I won't get hit too badly with winter. But
I hear you, man. I hear you. No, but that's one thing that we would definitely want anyone to take away from this today is that when you're going somewhere different, as they say, fortune favors the bold. Try things out, see what it's like, and I think for someone who's only used to one or the other, doing the other, if you're only used to having a car and going from place to place with your personal car, switching over to public transportation, it's going to be a switch, but it's definitely going to maybe give you a larger scope of comparison.
Mm.
And having come back to the U.S. now from being over there, and I think the same with Herman here, it definitely changes our view. And like, I've even thought, I may start using one of the buses that are close to my apartment to, go to work because it's close to where I live and it's close to where I go to work, and it's like $1.50 one way.
Mm.
Like, well, I may start doing that to save money, save wear and tear on my vehicle, and why not? I did it over there, I can do it over here. But I think a lot of people who have not used public transportation, they're a little hesitant.
Yeah.
For a variety of factors, and I'm sure we talk all day about it, but I do think that you should definitely try both, and it will definitely influence your thinking and your mindset about it.
Yeah. I think the way to go is public transport, especially in Asia. Like, probably the best mode of transportation you're gonna get through. And,
any large urban center is the way to go.
Yep.
Or it's great to have your own personal vehicle, but if you're gonna, why use it over, make your car last as long as you can. If there's a bus line or a subway line close to where you live and very close to where you work, use it. Use your car on the weekend or something. Any combination you want. At the end of the day, everyone can make their own decision, but just some different ways to think about it, and may save you some time, money, and if you can make your car last a couple more years, if you drive it less, and why not?
Yeah, man,
one less, less, farther gaps between your car payments from when you get vehicle to vehicle.
Yeah, man, the gas is what kills me, man. Like, I have to fill up every week these days. It's like,
yeah, I mean, think about it. Let's say you take the subway, and the bus every day. You may spend up to, in China, like 10 RMB a day on it, maybe a little more. Times that by 5, times it by 4. What are you gonna get? Versus right now, like having a car. Okay, I don't have a car payment. My truck's paid off, but I got my insurance. I got gas. I have maybe not every month, every few months, oil change. Check. Diagnostic inspection, vehicle inspection. Renewing your license plate every year.
oh God, yeah.
$100 whatever dollars in Illinois. These all add up, and it may break out even depending on where you're at. But at the end of the day, I'd say whatever makes you happy is the way to go.
Yeah.
But you definitely should take the economic factors into consideration.
Yeah, save yourself some money, and just take the public transport. Get a little travel pass as well, like maximize your experience. But yeah, I think that will wrap up today's episode on transportation in our travels. Maybe we can do a subset if we ever when we hit the EU side of things,
Yeah. Well, we can do that. I was in Rome for a summer, so I can definitely. But I think the main thing is, we like to explore these things. This is kind of a general overview of the different forms of public transportation we've used in our travels, but we can always go into more depth into any one particular type, if there's the interest in it. But also, every place is a little different. There's no one. Every type of public transportation, every place is going to be a little different, even if all the fundamental characteristics are the same. The style of the whatever you want to call it, the feel is going to be different from place to place.
So that wraps up today's episode. Thank you for listening in again. We'll be posting the next episode hopefully soon after I come back from my trip from Japan. And
awesome.
As always, adios.
Goodbye, and let Chinese that I know. 再见.
Goodbye.